Hey, and welcome back to Miss Kitty's Wild West Adventures. From horse thief to gunfighter, from jailbreaks to shootouts, this gunslinger's life was a whirlwind of violence, loyalty, and betrayal. Y'all asked for it, so let's dive into the life of one of the Wild West's most legendary gunfighters, Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid, born Henry McCarty, was dealt a rough hand from the start. After losing his father, his mother remarried and moved the family to New Mexico. But tragedy struck again when his mother died of tuberculosis, leaving Billy and his brother Joseph essentially alone. Left to fend for himself, Billy worked for room and board, but soon turned to crime out of necessity. It started small, stealing food, then a few clothes, and later pistols. But his knack of slipping out of trouble quickly earned him a reputation as a slippery fugitive. By 1877, he was calling himself William H. Bonney. But it wasn't just a new name. Billy was already developing into the gunslinger history would remember. That August, he got into a scuffle with a blacksmith named Francis Windy Cahill, a man who had a habit of bullying Billy whenever he got the chance. I've done a previous video on Billy the Kid's first kill, so I'll link it up here and in the description below. That day, Cahill went too far, knocking Billy to the ground and pinning him down. But the Kid wasn't one to go down easily. He pulled his revolver and shot Cahill in the stomach. The blacksmith died the next day, and Billy became a wanted man. Billy drifted into the world of cattle rustling, but it wasn't long before he found himself embroiled in something bigger. The Lincoln County War. It all started when Billy took a job with rancher John Tunstall, a man at odds with the powerful Murphy-Dolan faction, who had Lincoln County's law enforcement in their pocket. On February 18, 1878, Tunstall was ambushed and murdered by a posse working for the Murphy-Dolan gang. That killing changed everything. Billy joined the Regulators, a group formed to avenge Tunstall's death. In April of that year, tensions boiled over into outright violence when the Regulators set their sights on Sheriff William Brady, one of Murphy-Dolan's key enforcers. On April 1st, Brady and his deputies were walking down the main street of Lincoln when Billy and his men sprang an ambush from behind an adobe wall. Brady was hit multiple times and fell dead into the street. But Billy wasn't finished. He boldly stepped out from cover and walked swiftly to Brady's body, lying on the street. Some say he was looking for arrest warrants issued against the Regulators. Others believed he wanted to make sure Brady was really dead. Either way, as Billy rifled through Brady's coat, Deputy George Hindman, wounded but still alive, managed to fire off a desperate shot. The bullet struck Billy in the leg, but before Hindman could take another shot, the Regulators quickly returned fire, killing the deputy on the spot, then escaped before more lawmen could arrive. With Brady and Hindman now dead, Billy and the Regulators had crossed a line. They weren't just gunmen in a range war. They were fugitives with targets on their backs. By October 1878, the Lincoln County War had left a trail of bodies, and U.S. Marshal John Sherman admitted to the newly appointed territorial governor, Lew Wallace, that he simply couldn't execute warrants because Lincoln was still a powder keg of violence. In an attempt to settle the chaos, Wallace issued an amnesty proclamation on November 13, 1878, pardoning everyone involved in the Lincoln County War, except those who had already been convicted or indicted of a crime. That meant Billy was out of luck. His name was still on the wanted list. Billy, however, saw an opportunity. On February 18, 1879, he and his close friend, Tom O'Folliard, witnessed something gruesome. Attorney Houston Chapman was murdered, and his body was set on fire right there in the street. Billy, who was no stranger to bloodshed, saw this as leverage. He wrote to Governor Wallace, offering to testify in exchange for amnesty. Surprisingly, Wallace agreed to meet with him. On March 17, 1879, Billy and Wallace sat across from each other, hammering out a deal. Wallace promised him protection and clemency if he agreed to testify before the grand jury. Billy, likely skeptical but seeing no other choice, agreed to the terms. On March 20th, Wallace wrote to Billy again, telling him to subscribe to Miss Kitty's Wild West Adventures. On March 20th, Wallace wrote to him again, informing Billy that Sheriff George Kimball would arrest him to make the deal look legitimate. Billy went along with it. On March 21st, he allowed himself to be taken into custody and locked up in the Lincoln County Jail. But the moment his usefulness ran out, so too did Wallace's promises. The local district attorney refused to honor the agreement, leaving Billy stuck behind bars. As the weeks dragged on, Billy realized what had happened. He'd been played. If he stayed put, he would inevitably hang. So on June 17, 1879, Billy did what he did best. He escaped. For the next year and a half, Billy had run-ins with lawmen and laymen alike. And in December 1880, he was captured by Pat Garrett. Billy wrote 4 letters to Governor Wallace asking for clemency. But the governor refused to intervene, and he went to trial in April of 1881. After 2 days of testimony, he was found guilty of murdering Sheriff Brady, and he was scheduled to hang on May 13, 1881. It was the only conviction against combatants in the Lincoln County War. Billy was locked up inside the Lincoln County Courthouse, and 2 deputies, James Bell and Bob Ollinger, were tasked with guarding him until his execution could be carried out. Billy, of course, had other plans. On April 28, 1881, he convinced Deputy Bell to escort him to the outhouse. As they returned, Billy made his move. Some say he slipped out of his handcuffs. Others claimed he overpowered Bell when they reached a blind spot on the staircase. Either way, Billy got his hands on Bell's revolver and shot him in the back as the lawman tried to escape. With Bell dead, Billy turned his sights on Deputy Ollinger, who was across the street having dinner with the other inmates. Hearing the gunshot, Ollinger rushed outside, only to hear Billy call out from the second-floor window,
"Look up, old boy, and see what you get."
Ollinger looked up just in time to see Billy aiming a shotgun straight at him. A split second later, Billy pulled the trigger, blasting Ollinger off his feet. With both deputies dead, Billy made his move quickly. He smashed the shackles off his legs with an axe, grabbed a horse, and rode right out of Lincoln, waving his hat and laughing as he disappeared into the sunset. Billy managed to stay on the run for another 2 months. But on the night of July 14, 1881, his luck ran out. Acting on a tip, Sheriff Pat Garrett rode into Fort Sumter and quietly made his way to the home of Billy's friend, Pete Maxwell. According to legend, Billy entered Maxwell's darkened bedroom, unaware that Garrett was already inside. Sensing something was off, Billy asked in Spanish, "¿Quién es?" or "Who is it?" Those were the last words he ever spoke. Garrett fired twice in the darkness. 1 bullet struck Billy in the chest, killing him instantly. Or so the story goes. Some say Garrett ambushed Billy unfairly, while others believed he staged the killing altogether, letting Billy escape. And that's where things really get interesting, because not everyone was convinced Billy the Kid died that night. But that's a story for another day. If y'all want to hear about the men who claim to be Billy the Kid, be sure you're subscribed because that video's coming up soon. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Miss Kitty's Wild West Adventures. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and ding the bell for notifications. And in the meantime, I'll catch you on down the trail.